Hello, today we were with poet Carol Moldaw, who's going to read her poem Dinner Guests for Sign and Breath. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you, Phil. It's good to be here. I'll just start. Dinner guests. When wanting to walk, I circle the apple trees behind our house until suddenly done digging at gopher holes, the dogs flop down, crumbs of earth clinging to their paws like cake. I might accelerate or change direction as I round a lap at the dilapidated barn. My repetitions have worn a path in the grass, and now I follow the path I unconsciously made. I remind myself to look up at the mountain. The blossoms took me by surprise at first, although the buds didn't flower all at once, but arrived like dinner guests in lulls and bursts, each bearing similarly beribboned gifts the way guests used to, and now flocks of them are already drifting off in flurried gusts the way we tended to when we were guests.
Thank you so much, Carol. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
We started before the recording of you saying, well, you know, I started out as a lyric poet.
I hope I still am.
and then we pressed record, and I'm wondering how has your journey changed from that beginning, and how do you see lyricism as a component in your work?
Well, I'll answer the second part first. I think I'm very conscious of sound when I write, and so what the components of lyric poetry are, what sound and image, and I think so I'm always conscious of sound, and some of my poems have more images than others, or more image based, and I think that's part of what changed. I find I sometimes am pursuing a more complicated train of thought in as I've grown older, and sometimes I think that veers away from the lyricism, or the just purely kind of image and the frozen moment of a lyric poem.
And in fact, the line, you know, my repetitions have worn a path in the grass, and now I follow the path I unconsciously made, feels like a paradigm of that process, that one's consciousness of the path changes.
Yes.
One's relationship to the path, if not the path itself.
Yes.
And when I think about the complications of your poems, I'm wondering to what extent that consciously, or as you say, unconsciously following the path, that in your practice, you are thinking about how the poem would be heard rather than be seen on the page. Are those two, how do those two components relate?
For me, they're very much hand in hand, meaning I'm always going back and forth between them. When I write, I'm always talking aloud to myself. Oh, my light just fell. I hope it's still light enough. Anyway, sorry. I'm always testing my phrases aloud. I'm always testing the sounds aloud. So the oral component is really important to me. At the same time, I'm very aware of the line and the line on the page. And I like to have a certain feeling to the line, like tautness or expansion, but I don't like it to sort of have a sagginess, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I'm always sort of going back and forth, and I like it when I feel that the page instructs the voice, meaning that they've really meshed, so that you can read it, you can see it on the page, and you can hear it. You can hear how it could, should sound, or how I would sound it.
And certainly my dinner guests illustrates that. I'm thinking of two other lines, that this line could easily be a template or a signature for that, what you just said about about the wanting the line not to sag, each bearing similarly. Be right. Even to say it is it's impossible to say fast. Each bearing similarly beribboned gifts. I land on the S hard because of the rest of the line, and I think, wow, to say I want to be instructed by the page in how to make something sounds very much like a practice for your work. And I think when I think of your work, I think of the two qualities, and I love the title Dinner Guests, the two qualities of self and selflessness, in some ways embodied in the lyric, but there's also a deep self-conscious awareness in that. Is that something that you've cultivated, or is it something that has just been a result of us maturing, you might say?
So the self-awareness, but then you also said a selflessness. Is that right?
Yes.
I mean, I think it's temperamental in that I'm somewhat introverted, and I start with myself and my perceptions and my feelings, but I'm not wanting it to be about myself. I kind of want it to be my what I perceive that maybe are things other people might perceive or be happy to be pointed in the direction of. So I mean, I sometimes worry that it's too narrow a range, starting with a self like that. But I don't. So I guess it's temperament, it's cultivation, it's just the natural way my work has evolved. I'm always trying to expand a little bit beyond it, I guess, to take in more, trying to
And
take in more.
I think of also, I mean, your participation in the tradition. And I once spoke with, I had the privilege of speaking with one of your teachers about you, Derek Walcott.
About me?
About you. And he was very complimentary. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how the tradition, how your immersion in the tradition has made
Right.
this journey, made this path unconsciously followed.
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm tickled. I didn't know that, and it pleases me to think he was complimentary. And it's odd because I've just been recently thinking about him and going over some notes from that time in my life. Well, my academic or sort of poetic training in terms of tradition started when I took prosody with Robert Fitzgerald in college, and I think and so I felt like I had this wonderful like a spine, that I had developed through studying with him. But I don't feel. I feel enlivened by their traditions. I feel like poems speak to poems, but I don't feel bound by them. Meaning, I don't consider myself a formalist poet exactly. I think there's formal elements, but I want to make them my own. For instance, I've had a lot of half rhyme in my poems. I like playing with sound, but I don't like always adhering to rules. And the same with meter. I'm usually aware of sort of what the base of the line is. But so I just think poems speak to each other, and tradition. I love poetry. So how can I? It gives you. It's just all tools. Everything is tools, and whether you use that tool in an unconventional way or a conventional way, you're using it to make something of your own.
Thank you, Carol Moldaw. Pleasure speaking with you today for Sign and Breath, and I look forward to seeing the poem in print along with this
Thank you so
discussion.
much, Bill. I'm looking forward to this book. Okay, it's good to see you.